Hey everybody, this is Tommy from the Ravens Creek Study, and we're continuing in Biblical Theology 1. We're looking at kind of the overview of the concept of Messiah, and we're looking at some of the things that kind of fall into that theme. We are looking today at the issue of Christus Victor. This is one of the ways of atonement, and this isn't really the camp that I fall into, but I wanted to I wanted to open this up though, because it is something that I feel like it is necessary to at least be familiar with. The early teachings of Christianity focused around Christus Victor. And I know that this isn't the only statement of those early church fathers, but the idea is that Jesus died to destroy the power of the devil. We certainly find that in the New Testament. Christ was victorious over the power of the devil. And if you remember, if you've been following along from the beginning of this series, one of the first videos that we went through was the issue of darkness and the issue of how darkness hides, it conceals. And this is what the devil's power is, that when we got into the principalities and powers, we discussed what exactly is demonic power. And we said their power is darkness itself. It's that ability to hide and to cause secret things and to whisper into your ear, I know something you don't know. And to try to manipulate and to coerce according to a hidden, darkened wisdom. And this is very much what even businesses and institutions, whether educational or religious, are established on. Even the law was used in this, quote, secret way, that if you think of what is it that Paul's getting at in the book of Galatians? If you know anything about Judaism, you'll know that part of Judaism, not all of it, but part of Judaism is a discussion of God said, thou shalt not murder, you shall not kill. But what exactly constitutes murder? What if it's self-defense? What if it's this? What if it's that? And they're able to kind of debate, what does it mean exactly to covet? What does it mean exactly that we need to do these things and honor these things and live in this way? And so they've kind of come up with a separate set of rules on top of what God has given, the 613 commandments. They've set up a secondary set of rules, and this is supposed to be the interpretation. And this is kind of what I'm getting at here. What is it that is that wisdom of the principalities? It's searching for the secret and hidden things, as if God has not said something plainly from the beginning. And because we're focusing on finding conspiracies of secrets, of hidden things in the Bible, that if we could just crack the code or any of these sort of things, we are, if that's what we're looking at, we are not actually reading the Bible nor following by the wisdom of God. We're actually now promoting a law that is not of God. And this comes down to even the man who wrote the book on the Shemitah and the Harbinger, about how, anyways, I don't need to get into all that. The Jews to this day perpetuate an oral Torah, which they say you cannot understand the law, the Torah, the 613 commandments, without it explaining what everything is. But God did not establish a relationship with his people, nor with you and I. It wasn't then, nor is it now. God did not establish a relationship with his people so that we can now quibble about what each little detail actually means. That, in my opinion, is using the principalities' wisdom to be, quote, godly. It's not a godliness. It's this I know something you don't know mentality that's this holier than thou that the world accuses people of. Whether it's true or not is up for debate, but have you ever heard that? Whether directly or indirectly, this I know something you don't know, and so it's this wisdom that Christianity even seems to be growing upon, that because the pastor knows something that the lay people don't know, he's the one who stands up front to teach everyone. Or because this international speaker or even just national speaker, he's got some sort of big understanding or revelation or whatever that God has given him, and if only we all understood it, so we're going to invite him to our meetings and to our conferences, and he's going to get all of the bookings because this man knows something. It usually comes before some sort of a trap, trick, or manipulation. Usually that kind of statement of, I know something you don't know, whether it's from your older brother or from the pastor or from just an indirect kind of, it's not said but it's definitely said sort of thing. Usually there's some sort of a trap, a trick, or a manipulation, whether that's getting you to give their ministry money because they're being blessed by God, or whether it's, I don't need to get into all of it. I think you can figure it out. But Jesus was not intimidated. Jesus was not manipulated. No one took his life. He gave it willingly. Excuse me. For Jesus, excuse me, for Jesus to have victory over the principalities and powers, this is a statement to say he did not use that same wisdom. He did not use that same mindset, that same way of thinking and way of doing. And because he did not use it, and he willingly was tormented and eventually killed under that kind of intimidation and manipulation and that kind of wisdom, that fallen mentality, he was the one who ultimately had the victory. The devil thought that he had the victory by putting the Son of God to death. There's an assumption that he has overpowered the Son of God. And you can see this even in Colossians 2, that had he known, he would not have crucified the Lord of glory. But Jesus gave his life, and gave it willingly, and so it was his to take back up again. It says that in John. We also shall gain victory when we bear that cross in our own lives, when we willingly do not go by the principalities and powers' wisdom, when we willingly are a people who operate by a different mindset, a different set of rules, a different law, if you will, that it's no longer the law of written on the stone, but now it's the law of the Spirit, as it shows in Romans 8 there. That we are under the law of the Spirit, and because of that, we're able to live in a way that we are more than overcomers, because we love not our lives unto death. We overcome because we are the people of God who are in that same wisdom and pattern of God. We're underneath the one head who has overcome. When we humble ourselves even unto death, and we take up our own crosses to follow Christ, bearing a crown of thorns and bearing the shame of others, and restoring our brethren gently, and living in a way that is loving. I mean, I don't know any other word, but it's just love oozing from us in all cases to all people. When that's the way that we live, it's a lifestyle of willingly laying down our lives to be a ransom for many. Resurrection power comes into our beings, not because it's theologically the case of how it's supposed to work, but because this is the wisdom of God. We have an authority, we have a strength to overcome all that is in the world because we have willingly forfeited our lives, that those who lose their life gain life. This is just the way the kingdom works. Part of taking up our cross daily is dying for others. We don't expect that just because Jesus died for us, that we now don't have to endure suffering, persecution, or torture. We don't have to endure any kind of hazard. No, those things still exist. We still have to bear one another in love. We still have to restore one another gently. And beyond that, there's still the enemy of our souls. Through our willingness to endure the hardships that this world will bring, not only because life itself brings hardships, but because they who hated Jesus shall also hate those who follow him, namely the principalities, we shall through death overcome death. It's the statement of Christ, it's the logic of love, it's the logic of the kingdom, the way that things work. That is a statement of absolute victory and absolute sanctification. And that victory might not be something that we see and taste of in fullness here and now, but there will be a time, if we have an end times perspective to understanding that there's a consummation at the end of the age, a restoration of all things will be rewarded. And that's really what we need to hold on to. Cristus victor. Christ has had the victory, and through Christ so shall we.